This vegetable makes one of the most delicious soups that you will ever have the joy of tasting. And it pretty much grows itself from free stuff around your garden. Later for the soup, but let's talk about everything to do with growing sunchokes, aka Jerusalem artichokes, in your garden, in a raised bed from free stuff that you can find around your garden. And at these prices, let's get started. Although the best time to plant is late winter, early spring. But autumn is a great time to get started on a raised bed just because there's so much leaf and pruning that you have around that you can fill it up with for free. I'm going to start by digging out all this last year's soil and keeping it, and then adding in compost, leaves, cuttings from the garden, and then when I get the leaves up to the top, I'm going to add this soil on top, and that's what I'll be planting in. I filled up a wheelbarrow and 4 buckets. Okay, I think I've dug as deep as I care to at this stage. You know, for the sake of my back, I'm going to leave a bit of soil at the bottom, and now I'm going to start filling it up. This type of bed is best done over several weeks because as you keep adding leaves, they come up to the top, and it's nice if they compact down a bit. You can add a bit of chook poo or fertiliser such as blood and bone to the layers as you're building it up. If you're looking for an easy to grow vegetable that gives you tons of food, that is beautiful, low maintenance, then you can't look past Jerusalem artichoke. And this raised bed is in the perfect position for them. Sheltered, sunny, and with plenty of room to grow upwards. The next thing I'm going to do is add this wheelbarrow full of last year's compost now on top. I'm covering the top with a layer of pea straw. This was destined for the chook pen, but it got wet. Actually, it wasn't even opened, but somehow got left out in the rain and got wet. And I'm going to use this as the top. The best job is left for today, which is actually planting the Jerusalem artichokes. Nothing like unboxing. I haven't grown Jerusalem artichokes for a few years, so I had to buy mine online, but I will definitely be saving some tubers from this year's crop to grow next year. They do have a tendency to take over. In fact, my neighbour tells me that he planted Jerusalem artichokes and that they actually moved out under the fence and into the next door. One of the advantages of planting them in a raised garden bed like this is that they're not going to get away. They'll also be easy to harvest. You'll be able to find them. They need to be planted about 15 centimetres deep and ideally 60 centimetres apart. I'm going to plant them a little closer, and I'm also going to interplant with some lettuce because they take about 5 months to mature. So it's a long waiting game, and in the middle of that you can put a cash crop. Jerusalem artichokes take very little work, maybe a bit of water in the dry periods. I almost forgot about them actually, and certainly forgot to film them until I needed to do something about them because we're getting some asbestos removed from the sides of the house and under the eaves. I decided I'd tie them off the wall so they could work behind them, and it was a good choice. In the end, only a couple of stalks got broken. Even without asbestos work, Jerusalem artichokes often need staking. They just grow so tall and they can fall over, so that's a maintenance that comes a bit later down the track. Well, earlier I mentioned beautiful, and Jerusalem artichokes are of the sunflower family, and not to be confused with the globe artichoke, which is a thistle. It's also beautiful, and they're both edible, and they actually both have a earthy, nutty flavour. Harvest Jerusalem artichokes in the autumn when the flowers and leaves have died off. You actually don't have to dig all of them up. You can harvest as you need them, reaching down and digging up part of the soil and just taking what you need, and they last the longest this way. Or, as I'm about to do, you can dig them all up and store them. There's a nice one. It's a nice dry day. We're about to get rain. It's a bit like potatoes. If they're green, they're no good. These are looking so nice and clean. The Jerusalem artichoke's pretty knobbly, and if you harvest during a period where there's been a lot of rain, you can spend a lot of time cleaning it up. If you harvest after a bit of a dry period, you can kind of just brush the soil off initially and then just do a bit of a clean up right at the end. So I'm back at the beginning where I'm filling up buckets with soil and adding compost and other things to the soil again, and I'll plant out with some good tubers left over from this year's stock. And because we're putting the artichokes back in here, we don't really need to be as careful as I normally would if I was planning to plant another type of vegetable in here, because there will be enough in here for Jerusalem artichokes to keep propagating. This is an Ottolenghi recipe and it comes from his book called Gnocchi. We'll start with the garnish before I get started on the soup. It's the element that lifts this recipe to beyond special. It's a hazelnut and spinach pesto, and it's also got a sprinkle of garlic chives on the top. Zest of 1 lemon. I ended up with 8 kilograms of Jerusalem artichokes from this bed here. They store for about 3 weeks in the fridge, and following on from that, they're getting a bit soft. I'll leave you at the end of the video with how to ferment in a bottle, and they last for about 6 odd months in that process. There is another advantage of the fermentation process, is that it does reduce some of the gas elements, bodily gas elements. The artichokes can produce a bit of gas buildup. Not everybody is susceptible to it, but it is a thing. The artichokes can be eaten fresh or roasted or cut finely sliced and baked as chips, which is absolutely delicious. You can boil it in an acid like a lemon or a vinegar to help reduce that. And the bottling process, that fermentation process, definitely takes out a lot of that gassy element, and they do end up out of that process a nice crunchy vegetable that you can roast and eat in whichever way. Well, I think that's about it for this week. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for the beautiful comments and subscriptions, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Bye. I'll leave you with the fermenting process.